All right, so thanks for joining everybody. It's June 19th. It's John Jay talking about the HOA and the covenant and the lien. And the subject is going to involve single family residential property. You can use HOAs for many things. But if you want to know more, if you want to get some like tutorials, some technical learning, I have video series on different subjects, LLC strategies, crypto tax, divorcing the state, which deals with family court. Those are all at aceofcoins.club. And then if you want to talk to me, aceofcoins.com has an order form for consulting and also a calendar where you can schedule time with me. So I do those every week. I love those. I love those calls. It keeps me focused. And so tonight I want to talk about some things that came up over the last week regarding HOAs. And just there's really a misunderstanding of that. So HOAs, homeowner associations, right? There's an association of people that live in the same community. So if you live with, your neighbor on the same street, you're part of already an association. It's an association. And so that's distinct from a corporate entity that is called an association. That actually shouldn't be called an association because a corporation cannot be an association. It can be associated with other things, but it is not in itself an association. It is a corporate body, a single entity that has no association by itself, right? So many times the homeowners association, the people in the community form a corporate body that's separate from the association. So the association existed long before the corporate body existed. But the purpose of forming the corporate body is so you can reach a consensus and have a policy, or so to speak, or set of rules that can be applied to everyone. And the way it works really well, and the way it's abused, it works both ways. Like most things in nature, most things in our existence, like fire. You can destroy stuff and you can make stuff with it, right? Well, with an HOA, same kind of thing. An HOA, to make it work, uh, it functions as a lien on your property. So the association of you and your neighbors is not a lien in itself. But when the neighbors to get together and make a vote and reach a consensus, like by a majority vote, and they form a corporate body, and the corporate body says, we're going to adopt a set of rules. And because the majority vote allows that to proceed, the way those rules are going to be valid, you can't just have a set of rules without consequences, right? You can't, because then that's just asking people to do certain things. And that if they don't do it, then there's no consequence. Then it's not really a rule, right? So the way they do it is they have a set of rules and they're written in what's called a covenant. A covenant is a very special contract. It's not just a contract. It's very important. It's almost like a mortgage. A mortgage is like a covenant, but it's a mortgage is a statute staple. It's a lien on the property. It's a law. So the covenant works like a mortgage. And the covenant has all the terms in there. And what makes it powerful is that in the covenant, the default provision is that if a person violates the rules, he's subject to fines and penalties, and then those turn into a judicial process. You have to, I think most states are the same. I think all the states do this. There's a judicial process where you have fines that are established by notice because you violated something, right? And then there's notices issued by the HOA or its servicing company, and then those get reduced into a judgment lien. So the HOA has to sue you to reduce its fines, its notices into a judgment lien. That's how it works. So you get due process, right? You can challenge whether or not those notices are proper and whether you're reasonably subject to the fines, right? Because maybe the fines are unreasonable, right? So once that becomes a judgment, the HOA, the third party, okay, the corporate body, then has the authority under the covenant. This is, I'm telling you, as how most covenants are written. They don't have to be written this way, but they are. Maybe they should be written this way, but you guys can decide. Hey there, Ray. So the covenant allows the HOA to conduct a foreclosure against your property for the $200 fine. You know, and I don't know what the deal is regarding, the equity in your property and the mortgage and all this stuff, but the HOA covenant is the lowest priority lien on your property, but it still has the right to foreclose in most covenants. You can change this, and this is what I'm talking about here. but it has the lowest priority. So what that means is the HOA can foreclose upon your property and take the $200 or whatever the money is and sell your house, but it's subject to the mortgage. You cannot avoid a mortgage with an HOA foreclosure. So an HOA is lien is for subordinate to your mortgage. It's also subordinate to everything else. I mean, everything. It's subordinate to property taxes. It's subordinate to a mechanics lien. It's subordinate to a judgment lien from a creditor. It's the last lien. But if you think about how this works, it's very powerful. It's so powerful because if you're just going to accept the HOA, the way it operates, and you're going to bicker with the HOA members about your grass being too tall or something, you kind of lost. When really, because look at it this way, the premise of the HOA is that it's going to make sure that your neighbor is not going to work on changing his oil in the driveway for 3 days, or not going to leave his car jacked up in the street without a wheel on there for, a week or something like that, right? The presumption is that doing so would lower the property value. So the HOA is claiming that it's going to preserve the property values, right? But it's not. And it's nice. It's nice that they want to say that, but it's not, because what happens if your property value comes down? What is that? That's an economic situation, right? That might have to do with a market trend. The HOA has no control over that. So the HOA can't make this promise. So it's a false premise, right? So what would be a valid premise? Well, the valid premise is this. If I live in my house, I think that maybe I'm a sloppy person and maybe I'm lazy, but I recognize if I'm near neighbors, I need to keep my house looking nicely. So there, I have to live at let's say a better standard, okay? Then the guy that keeps his house nice, he's going to expect that from me. That's fair. We live in the near community. We live in the same thing. We're neighbors, right? We live in the same community. So why would I do that? Well, if I'm going to sell my house someday, I want my neighbor's house to look okay. So that makes sense. But that doesn't mean that the HOA is going to preserve the value of my property. The HOA cannot do that, but it can police the neighborhood in such a way that it prevents people or penalizes people from doing obvious things that make the property look like, I don't want to live there, right? To a newcomer. If people want to move into the property and buy property, that's going to increase my property value. Every time a house sells in my neighborhood, it's going to increase the property value. So I want the HOA to be there. But I don't want the HOA to have some psychopaths to harass me for months because I wanted to do some landscaping and I didn't ask for permission. But maybe I checked with my neighbor and asked him what he thought about adding some crotons to my front yard. Okay. And my neighbor thinks it's a great idea. So I don't need anybody's permission. I'm just being polite to my neighbor. Hey, what do you think, neighbor? If I paint my house a boring pastel color, is that okay with you? If he likes it, and my other neighbor across the street thinks it's okay, and maybe my neighbor next door doesn't think it's okay, but two of my neighbors think it's okay, I think that's enough, right? I don't need the HOA to harass me forever because I didn't ask for permission and all this sort of thing. There are some things where you need to get permission because you're living in a community and things like this. We understand, but let's not allow the psychopaths to have the power to take my house away because I put up some flowers in my front yard. This happens. And in fact, I think the Florida legislature is doing something right now about this situation. I mean, this is happening around the country. So with all this understanding, understanding that the HOA has the last lien, the last say on the lien rights in the property, that means that other liens that are before it, let's talk about the mortgage. So let's say the mortgage is foreclosed upon. That means the mortgage lien gets exhausted. What happens to the HOA lien? Doesn't go anywhere. So let's say the property gets foreclosed on and sold at auction, and some new owner comes in, right? Some new buyer, right? Becomes the new owner. Well, he accepts the terms of the HOA covenant, and he's subject to that lien. He already agrees to that lien. That lien never went away. So the lien applies to the property, not the property owner. It's very powerful. So what happens if you have county codes and city codes that are unfairly imposed on the property or done in an abusive manner? That happens sometimes. Sometimes they're fair and it's worth it to go and argue the case on the merits, but then it costs money. But if your neighborhood gets together, if your neighbors get together, which they should, it doesn't mean you have to be their friend. It just means that you have to recognize it's your neighbor and you kind of have to work together. So what if your neighbors got together and said, we don't like the county codes here. We don't like this happening. We don't like this and that because we have the last lien interest. The county has a lien interest in your property by statute. The city has a lien interest in your property by statute and by regulation. And your HOA has that last lien interest. It's the lowest priority behind your county code, city code, judgment liens, your mortgage and mechanics liens. It's the last. So if the county were to impose a fine that's unfair and your neighbors say, wow, that's really unfair, and go to a point of foreclosing on the property and complete the foreclosure, the HOA can then strip the claim from the title. I'm going to get into some language here. You guys can stop me. The HOA can strip the claim. That means the county code people had a claim on the title, and then you violated a county code, and after notice, you still didn't cure the violation, whatever it was. And so the county can then foreclose its interest. Let's say a $50 fine, right? Can foreclose upon your property. And let's say it does that, but that covenant doesn't go away. So if your HOA covenant has provisions in there, and I'm not going to get into the language in this call, but if your HOA has provisions that allow the HOA to then recover the lien, cover the title through its own foreclosure after this county forecloses on the property, let's call it unfairly, the HOA can then foreclose upon the property and give it back to you. I'm not telling you all the language of how that works. I'm just saying, because the HOA, it's your neighbors. The HOA is your neighbors. It has the last lien rights on the property. So it has the last say in what happens to the title of the property. The HOA has a claim on the title of your property after everyone else's claim is exhausted. What better position to be in than that? So that is all the more important to get control of your HOA. You want to modify its right to foreclose on the property. And so if people understand this, what that allows you to do in your neighborhood is you can have your own code, you can have your own provisions about how you want to use your property. Let's say you want to put a well on the property, and the county says you have to do this crazy thing that you don't want to do. Well, if you get together with your neighbors and you say, you guys, what do you guys think? Does a well affect you guys? Probably not. Can I put a well in if I just talk to a couple of my neighbors and see if it's okay? And maybe I have to send a letter out to a few people. Let's just change the requirements for putting a well on. I don't need a permit from the county. I can get a permit from my HOA, from my neighbor, and I can make it more favorable to what I want. And we don't have to change the county code. We can ignore it because we ultimately, as the HOA, we control the title to the property and we have the last word over that property title. It's about the title to the property. So think of it like this. You have the title and you have claims on the title. The first claim on the title is going to be the owner. That's the guy whose name is on the quitclaim deed, right? And then everyone after that is going to be the mortgage lien holder. It's going to be a judgment lien holder, someone who sued that person who's the title holder for a judgment lien, creditor, whatever. It's going to be the county codes, the city codes, and then it's going to be your HOA covenant. That's how it works. Now, think about this. All the liens, all the claims on the title, the mortgage, the second mortgage, the HELOC, right? The judgment lien, all those can be exhausted. But the HOA covenant is not exhausted. It's going to stay there. The only way to remove it is if the covenant is the HOA, the corporation, the body, the corporate body votes to remove the covenant. So they have to record. So when they form the HOA and the covenant, they record it in the county at the same place where the mortgage is recorded. Okay, but that covenant applies to all the properties in the neighborhood, not just one, like your mortgage. When they release it, they can literally file a document that releases the covenant, that dissolves the HOA and the terms of the covenant. But that's what would have to happen to release that lien power. But in the meantime, why not just keep it there? Why not get control of your HOA? That means maybe get on the board. You have to get your neighbors involved and you can modify that lien you can modify the covenant to give terms that would be favorable to do certain things. Certain things like maybe you don't like the county code, maybe you don't like the city code, maybe you do. Maybe you don't like the situation where the bank is unfair, right? If the bank wants to foreclose on somebody, you can recover the property for them. You can do that. That sounds kind of crazy, right? Yeah, so
Uh,
Aline has a good question. Strip the claim. So it's like I don't know if I can give you a good analogy, but when you have a title and then you have a claim on it, there's a pecking order of people who have an interest in the title and power over the title, okay? Power over the title. The title holder is the owner of the property. He has power over the title to sell the property. The lien holders, the claim holders, don't. They cannot sell the property unless they exhaust their lien rights in a court or through a process. Like in California, it's, the non-judicial process. You have to exhaust your lien rights and then you can sell the property at auction, right? There has to be cause. But the title holder doesn't have to have cause. He can sell his property whenever he wants. Does that make a sense? Does that make a difference? Yeah. So if you have a clear title with no mortgage, so what? So you have a mortgage, a quit claim deed, you're the title holder, and no mortgage claim. So what? So you have no mortgage claim. But you still have property taxes. That's a claim. So that's county codes, state law. And you have county codes, building codes, things like that, permitting, and city if you're in the city, uh, perimeter, the city boundaries. So you always have a claim on the property. There's always a claim because of our society. That's how it works. So it's best to have the last word. That's why I say the HOA covenant is very powerful. If you understand that you can take the power, if you got to work with your neighbors. If you don't, this won't work. But we're only talking about claims on the title. We're not talking about the use of the property. Okay, that's easements.
mhm.
Does that make sense, Elaine? Strip the claim.
Can I ask a question, John?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Yes.
So if, for example, of course I'm thinking about the situation in California that we've dealt with. Um, so the county says that there are all these problems with the property, all these code violations, and they rack up the fines and they go to court and they say there's this many fines and this is what it costs to fix the property and it's so much money, they get the right to sell the property. Now, in this situation, the property holders don't have an HOA, so that's the scenario. But if they had an HOA, how would you use that to give the property back once it's
Okay.
been sold to someone else?
That's a really good question. So here's how you would, this is an abusive situation she's describing.
Yeah.
Not to go into too much detail. So instead of arguing with the county who wants to steal your house because a competing, conflicting financial interest with your interest with
Mhm.
taxpayers, what you do is in the HOA covenant, you create a provision in the covenant that gives the right of foreclosure under a condition that would occur to anyone and that would allow the HOA to foreclose on the property after the county's lien has been exhausted through a foreclosure sale. So you can do it 1,000 different ways. And I mean, I can write the thing for you.
Right, it has to be written into the
Yeah.
covenant.
You
Okay.
just have to be creative about writing a condition. Like, for example, here's an example. Let's call it something that's already existing, impact fees. So your HOA says, if you're a new person in our neighborhood, you got to pay an extra $100,000. And if you don't, we're going to take your house back. So that's an example. The
And
HOA can do that. There's no limit on this, by the way.
this threat to take your house if you don't pay 100,000, that's coming from the HOA or from the
Yes,
county?
the HOA can impose this term that will be like something like the value of your property would be the impact fee you have to pay. They can call it whatever they want.
Okay,
Yeah. And then they can use it to recover the property because the new owner is not going to pay it. How's he going to get the money in most cases? Or why would he? But the HOA has the right to do it because the HOA has a covenant which is seen by the courts as the law of that property, the law of the title. Just like I always tell you about the
Mhm.
mortgage is the law of the title, and so is the covenant. It's recognized by the court as the law, like a statute.
Wow.
It's very powerful.
This is completely unknown. Nobody knows this stuff.
I know. But if you go look at the statutes, we're able to do this. We're able to do this. Yeah. So, I mean, to take it a step further, I mean, in the covenant, I mean, I would even make it to where it's not even subject to judicial process. I would use an arbitration process, but
Right.
probably it's not even necessary, but you could do that. I mean, you have so many options because you're writing a law on
Mhm.
certain conditions.
Mhm.
Think about it like this. Can most people qualify, no matter how much money you have, qualify to live in the Hamptons? I would imagine probably not. You have to have certain social status to live in the Hamptons.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter how much money you have.
Mhm.
And you can do that with an HOA. Why not? And so this is recognized by our court system.
There's just a question asking, so if the county forecloses, then the HOA would foreclose after
You could
that?
do that. Yeah, the county would foreclose by selling the property. It would foreclose. It cannot own your property, so it would have to auction your property. And let's say someone buys it. Fine. He buys it, but then there's a condition in the HOA that he can't meet. And it results in a foreclosure of the taking back of the property. And that's his problem because he didn't read the covenant before he bought the property.
Mm. So it would also prevent people from buying the property at foreclosure anyway.
Yeah, it should. It should. And so what's going to happen then? Someone eventually is going to settle with the title. And then you invoke the clause in your covenant, which comes down to being creative. I have a standard version, but you can make it all kinds of things you want. You can make a condition in there, almost anything you want, that gives the HOA the right to foreclose whenever it wants. You can do that. It's not unfair to use a double negative. It will be acknowledged and upheld by the courts. Because the problem is, if they don't want to uphold those provisions in that, what's going to happen is you're gonna jeopardize all the HOAs around the country. So they're going to have to uphold it. Yeah, it's the standard. All right. So any questions on that? Because I have something more productive to talk about, more fun. Because if you're the boss, okay, you are the boss. You just went to a lot of trouble to buy a house. You joined a community and it's governed by an HOA. And you are the boss. You need to be involved. Well, look at the business model for Costco. I love this as an example. It buys in volume, right? Think about this. So
Mm.
you have let's say Walmart, okay? Walmart, the grocery Walmart, right? So grocery Walmart doesn't know who the customer is. It's anybody. So do you think Walmart can negotiate with a grocery supplier, a wholesaler, better than Costco, who knows its customer, who has the demographics, who has the purchase history, who can make a better deal with the supplier? Costco, right? Because it knows its members, it knows what it's going to do. Well, same thing for your neighborhood. Imagine if all your neighbors got together. Let's say you had 400 neighbors in your neighborhood and you formed an organization, got a couple of people together and you went and you started doing some buying, right? And let's say we know everybody's going to want laundry soap. So let's go make a deal on that. So you make a deal with the supplier. Hey, we can buy 14 pallets of laundry soap this week. What kind of deal can you get, right? So, okay, we're talking about lowering your cost of living if you're using your neighbors for what you can use them for, right? So, why wouldn't I use my HOA for business? Why wouldn't I use my HOA to go around town and get better deals at the gym, better deals at certain restaurants, better membership deals? Why not? Because I'm speaking in volume now,
Mhm.
working with people. And let's say we want to take it to a different level. Let's say you're an entrepreneur and it's not just your neighborhood. Maybe your people in your neighborhood doesn't care. Maybe you have a good sales ability and you can go to all the HOAs in your neighborhood. Let's say five. You do a sales letter to your five HOAs in your neighborhood. Just pick five in like this part of your neighborhood, this part of your town, right?
Mhm.
And you send a letter and say, look, I can negotiate way better deals for the people that live in your neighborhood with this, and that. and I'll get taken care of, but I'm just saying I can do this for you. All you have to do is this, and then you help them, and then next thing you know, you got yourself a contract with all the HOAs, and you create kind of like a virtual Costco. This can be done with your HOAs. So I think your HOA is a good customer. For those of you out there who want an opportunity, if you put some effort into it, I think you can make a lot of money with it. Eric, did you have Eric's phone? Did you have some what do you think? Have any question?
Yes. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering on your impact fee idea. I assume you would have that modified or have a way of modifying it if someone wants to sell their house.
Exactly. See, the HOA can write a variance or we can have an exception. So I'm just speaking in blunt terms. I can make it really elaborate like a computer programmer, right? I can put all these conditions in there like the lawyers do. So I'm just speaking, for this call, but you're right. We can do that.
Okay.
Yeah. Here's how it looks. I'll tell you how it looks. In the sale, you're selling your house and the buyer says, "Whoa, what's up with this? I got to pay for the house again. Whoa, I'm going to pay 250. No, I don't want your house." You say, "No, no, no, no. I've already got a variance from the HOA. Here's a piece of paper. It's already signed by the board. You're clear." You see how that works? Very simple. Words on
Makes
paper.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but you can be more creative than that. So, but the idea is, okay, so once we figure out the little details about getting rid of the problems that I see many people have, let's look at what we can do for ourselves. Because we can do a lot of things when we're working together with groups of people that we're already living with, you know? So, anyways, it's my idea
Mhm.
on that. I can go for hours on that subject because there's so many business opportunities for that. Your HOA should be running the town. Your county board of supervisors should be ignored. Your city council should be ignored if you don't like them. I mean, sometimes you like them, sometimes they're good, right? But your HOA is the boss. If you make it the boss, you can make it the boss. It's you. Because you're paying the bill, right? You're paying the property taxes, you're shopping, you're working every day, you own a house, you took the liability, you bought the farm, you should make the rules, right? And what better way to make the rules when everyone else agrees with you? And so, yeah, there'll be conflicts, but you can work out something with your neighbors. You have a common interest.
So is it easy to create an HOA with just like the people that live on your block or the 20 houses in your immediate area if you don't have
Yeah.
one?
Think about it like this. Let's say you know nothing about law. Let's say you know what's an HOA? What does that look like? Well, drive through my neighborhood and I see like this big entrance gateway and a big stone wall, and it says like, Del Webb Community or something like that, right? Well, I would imagine that's an HOA
Mhm.
in that community. So I go on the internet, I go in my county records, and I look for Del Webb's community HOA, and I can go to the county and I can get a copy. It's probably 28 pages long. I can get a copy of Del Webb's covenant for
Mhm.
that neighborhood. And I can look and see what they did,
Mhm.
and I'll do it for mine. But let's say
Mhm.
mine already has a covenant. I'll get a copy of it. They already give you a copy when you buy the house, anyways.
Mhm.
So you get a copy of the covenant and you go through it and you start saying, "Oh, so this is what happens when this happens. Read the damn covenant."
Mhm.
And then you can have some power because the covenant is very powerful. But if you leave it to the psychopaths and don't do anything, you're going to get what you get. You're going to get the problems that I've seen people have. So wake up your neighbors. You have to get them involved. How do you get your neighbors involved? This is another thing too. This is like sales, okay? And I'm not the best salesperson, but and I'm not the certainly not the best social person. I love to be alone. I don't like to talk to people. But if it's necessary, I will put my grill on the front yard on Saturday and start fired up and start some burgers and some hot dogs, and I'll put a big ice chest of beer, and I'll start telling my neighbors to come on over and get some free beer and burgers and stuff like that, just to start, conversations and have some fun.
Mhm.
And so that's the kind of thing that you want to start getting involved in is you want to work with your neighbors. And when you do that, I mean, everything good happens from that. when you work together. But keep in mind, there's some legal aspects here that are really to your advantage. The HOA can protect you. It can give you some power over everything else that wants a claim on your property. And because the HOA is a collective, unified, like a Costco membership, it's a membership. It's a PMA. Your HOA is a PMA, right? So is Costco. So Costco gets its great pricing. In fact, Costco makes the supplier give special packaging. Have you ever seen this? It's amazing. You can't get the packaging in some products in other stores. Only Costco has them.
Right.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So with numbers, with your HOA, and you have all these neighbors, you can demand and you can negotiate pricing for consumer products. I use laundry soap as an example, but what about all kinds of products that people don't get? I wouldn't start negotiating on things like bread and milk. I would negotiate on things like soap, things you're going to keep, dry goods, right? But if your neighbors don't want to do that, I mean, maybe you want to do that for other neighborhoods. You can do that around the world, around the country. I shouldn't say the world, but you can do that around the country.
So an HOA is not limited to a geographic area?
No, never, because anywhere in the world you have people living together. People live in communities. That's how people live, right? So those are members of an association. I don't know how they handle it in different countries, but I know here in the States, you have corporate bodies that usually end up managing the association members. And most people don't make the distinction between the association and the corporate body that is called the association. It's not the association. The association is the people that actually own the house. So each owner of the house is an association member. And also for people that actually are renters, if you look at your lease agreement, you'll see that you enjoy all the rights and privileges of your owner. Okay. So you're the de facto owner as a tenant. One of the things you don't have the right to do is sell your property. It's not yours, but you have the right of enjoyment just like the owner does, right? So some of the technicalities the HOA makes you undergo are to appear at an HOA meeting by proxy of the owner. So that's something you have to work on if you want to do that. So just don't exclude yourself just because you're a tenant, okay, a renting. Elaine, what do you think?
Well, just backing up a little, are you saying that people who don't live in the same area can be part of the same HOA, or did I misunderstand?
That's not normal, but you could do that. But you could have several. What I'm saying is, I'm not talking about that, but yeah, you could make an association of homeowners that without property that's what's in the same neighborhood.
Like right next to each other, like it could be people
Yeah,
from one street and two streets
yeah.
over, and then five
Yeah.
streets over. And
Contiguous lots. Most of the time your HOA is going to be contiguous lots, but nothing restricts you from doing that. It just looks weird. Like how you gonna, because you don't have a common interest. I mean, you're not in the same neighborhood, but you could do it. The law does not preclude you from doing that.
Well, especially if you were like saying like a buying club.
Yeah, buying club, you could do it that way. So
Yeah.
you got to be careful on that one. So the buying club, now what you need to do then is this. You got to have a database and you got to collect names and addresses of all your, you got to create a membership if you want that buyers club. But if you go to the HOA where all the members of the HOA are contiguous properties, you already have the membership. All you got to do is get the HOA to agree to it because the HOA will do a vote and that'll be binding on everybody. So there might be a third of the neighbors that don't care. So what?
Mhm.
Who cares? That's still part of the membership because the HOA said so. The seller doesn't care. He's just going to see, all right, you got an HOA with 4,000 members, 500 members, whatever. Great, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 HOAs. You're a Costco to me. That's how it looks.
I think one time we talked about a whole county doing a master HOA. Remember that, John?
You
Like
could
in
do a
hundreds
master
of
HOA as
counties.
well. That's even more powerful.
Then
You
you
can
could,
connect HOAs together, and with that master HOA, that's what I would do. I would create a master HOA, and I would ask HOAs to join it for the purpose of getting better prices on consumer goods or whatever. You can really leverage numbers of people, if you have certain numbers of people. This is a great, like you're saying in the boroughs of North New York City, same idea. It can be done. The laws are very friendly for this. Um, People they have to work together, really. So if you want an example of what an HOA looks like, go look at an HOA example. It's public record. go pull a copy of it.
And then with the master HOA in the county, we talked about before too, is you could actually turn around at oppressive counties like we're talking about, foreclose
Yeah.
back on the county. Remember, put them
You
into
can do that. You can certainly do that. You have the last word, right? And your lien never goes away. The funny thing about HOA is once it forecloses on a property, it still has the lien. It's the only entity that can do that, thanks to state law.
Hmm.
no, it wasn't foreclosed. It was put the county in involuntary bankruptcy. That's what it was.
Ooh, that's more interesting. That's a different
Yes.
subject. But yeah. That's a different subject. But yeah. Yeah, so it just comes down to writing some language. So I mean, it takes teamwork. I do this. I mean, you can ask me if you want, but I have I have recordings on this sort of thing. But I wanted to bring this up tonight. You know, take it to your neighbors, talk to them.
And so you could definitely have a situation where some people have an HOA together and then they're part of a larger HOA, so it can umbrella out. Is that possible?
You could do a master HOA, yes.
Mhm,
You
mhm,
could also just not do master HOA. You could just do like an agreement where you have this HOA, this, and this HOA under this agreement.
mhm,
You can add in agreements. You don't need to
mhm,
make it an HOA, but you could. All you really care about is that, let's say, for example, you're trying to negotiate better consumer prices. You need one HOA with decent membership, like 1,000 people. You're going to
mhm.
get pretty good prices.
Do you have to like sort of figure out the purpose of the HOA, like what it is you're trying to accomplish before you
Well,
start it?
the HOA does have a purpose, like I said earlier, is that to preserve the value of the property, which I think is bogus. But certainly you
Stopping
can,
the spread of COVID.
yeah, right. Oh my gosh. You can have the HOA have a purpose, a business purpose that's completely different. Like for example, bringing people together and ne uh, giving us leverage to negotiate better consumer pricing for common goods that many of us use every day. I mean, you could have that as the purpose of the HOA. That would be a real useful purpose. The other
Mhm,
one is a lie. Protect
mhm,
the value of your property. First of all, you're not liable to do that, and you're not accountable to me. If the price of my property goes up, I don't owe you a piece of that. If it goes down, you don't owe me compensation because the value of my property went down. It's not your fault.
mhm, mhm,
Can't ultimately protect me from that. So yeah, it's a
mhm.
false premise right now. But
Right.
certainly an HOA should have, and that's what I would do. If I got together with my neighbors and I amended the HOA by vote, you just have a meeting, have a vote, follow your bylaws or whatever that require the vote, and propose this amendment to your covenant. And in there, I would say, this is the criteria for this and that and language. You can make it whatever you want, but because it's still a lien on the property.
Mhm,
You can have multiple HOAs, okay? Um, you can have multiple HOAs in a master HOA. I don't know what, yeah.
yeah, that's, I was asking you that
I
for.
wouldn't have, think about it like this. An association of homes typically are homes that are in the same area, like on the
Mhm,
same street, and then this street turns over here, but then it comes back over here. And at some point there's a cutoff, right? Maybe there's a major interstate or something, right? A highway that divides that neighborhood, right? So there's some lines of demarcation, so to speak. So typically your members of the HOA are going to be contiguous. The homeowners are going to be contiguous. I don't think it has to be because the association can be formed by other similar attributes than the proximity of where the houses are located.
mhm,
But it looks weird. Why do that? All right. So I've got some where we have property that's individual by itself, where we have the HOA having that one property as the member. There's nothing wrong with that.
mhm,
You can have one home, one parcel, 1 acre, for example, 1/4 acre, one home as the sole member of the HOA. There's nothing
hmm.
to preclude you from doing that.
Are there estate planning reasons for doing that?
Well, there's nothing wrong with doing that, but what you're doing
Mhm,
is you're creating a lien on the title subject to certain terms.
mhm,
And who would enforce those terms? Whoever wrote those terms. I mean, it looks silly.
mhm,
It's it's self-dealing, but it's okay. It's legal.
mhm.
Yeah, it would be a state planning reason, especially in the areas where the property taxes have gone up so high from the school boards, that if they all form big HOAs, and then when the county sells the house, you
Right.
strip it.
Right. You could even go to a point where if you're a single household and you have an HOA, I would create a master agreement and try to join another HOA, right? And then that master agreement would govern everything. And you could do what you just said, Ray. You can have that last word. You can write the lien rights and all these things and the conditions.
Right. Like you're saying, 100 grand.
Yeah.
So nobody's gonna want to buy it. Or if they do, you can
Or other
reforeclose.
conditions. Exactly, or other conditions. Yeah. So all this discussion here is about the title. We have the use of the property, which we can talk about in another call, but the HOA is very powerful, and I think you should just look at it and just don't be a victim of just thinking that, oh, well, this happened to me. My HOA did this to me, when you actually have a say in it. Green.
So what Elaine is talking about is Governor Hochul has put in Green New Deal laws type of thing, which will make the Con Ed rates go up.
Yeah, you can do that. Your HOA
How
can
would
do
you how would you
yeah.
do that? Can you walk
Okay,
it
I need to
through?
know more. Scam laws provoking Con Edison. What is that? I
Con
don't
Edison is
know.
it's the electric company.
A rate
Yes.
increase, energy pricing.
She's doing she's still on the Green New Deal because it's
Okay,
communist here. So it's
all right.
increasing Con Edison prices.
This is a different matter, so I'm not saying automatically like it's easier to get consumer goods. When it comes to energy, that's a different matter because you're dealing with a utility that's its own government.
Mhm.
So the
The
answer is
utility
yeah,
is its own government?
it is its own government. I can explain that. I'm not going to
Okay,
do it on this
please.
call, but I can't. Okay, it's its own government because of its easement power over the property.
Mhm. Mhm.
Ah,
It requires you it places you under a different set of rules than if you had something else going on the property. They're very clever, very powerful organization. So the answer to the question is yes, you can use this, but you're going to have to be work pretty hard here because you need a competing energy supply,
Right.
and you can get it. You got to work to get it, and you can do that through your HOA, and you can beat Con Edison if
And
you
then everyone be using the new energy
yes,
supply.
and you can use the same infrastructure that Con Edison is using with a different energy supplier with your
that's
HOA.
what they do.
They do that.
They do that, absolutely. And they
Yeah.
charge you
So
more
you can
for using
trump
the
them.
same.
You can do one up them by doing your using your HOA, but you got to start looking at how this is working. You've got to look at the infrastructure, who owns the infrastructure, what Con Edison is doing. How is it its own infrastructure or is it someone else's infrastructure that is being used? But you can buy energy from another supplier besides Con Edison and you can get better rates if you work together in HOAs. That's probably the better example, by the way.
Hmm.
That'd be a better use case if you get your neighbors together because you can buy energy far cheaper. Now it has a competitor. The only reason why it's doing this is there's no competition, but there could be if you all got together with HOAs.
Wow.
Okay, the UCC1 lien is not, it doesn't exist. UCC1 is a form, okay? It's a cover sheet to an actual security agreement. The security agreement is a lien. That does nothing to protect your property or collaterally attack your mortgage. All right. It doesn't adversely affect county liens, county codes, city codes, none of those. You cannot collaterally attack a city code, county code with a UCC1 security agreement lien. Two separate things. That's why I'm talking the way I'm talking today. Your HOA covenant will do that. Your UCC1 doesn't do anything. Yeah. So that's a good question because that's a very powerful one and a big deal because for energy, I mean, look at it this way. Just say, let's say you like your rates. Let's say you like the rates you're getting for your energy. What if you got your HOA, your people together, and you found better rates from someone else? And you have a right to buy them. Many statutes are like this. You're allowed to buy if you can get better rates, right? You can get better rates with volume buying. And then what that does is it creates competition now. Just one deal would create a demand, a need for the other supplier to say, well, I can give you better rates. Oh, put that in writing, and I'll go to my other supplier and see if he'll match that, right?
Well, I think part of it is, I need to learn more about what the specifics are of Hochul's ordinances. And was
Yeah.
this passed by the state assembly, or did she just do this by some kind of
Any
executive
ordinance is a lien
order?
on your property. An ordinance is a lien on your property. State assembly, city council, county board of supervisors, lien on your property. All that's a lien on your property. And your HOA has the last word on the lien on your property. So you can do whatever you want as long as your HOA is friendly to what you want to do. You can ignore them, in other words. It would nullify all the legislation. How about that? You guys have the power. That's why I'm taking my time to do this call. You guys got something really powerful if you want to do it. If you're in a neighborhood with no HOA, you should form one. It should be the governing body of your neighborhood.
And did you say that you can form an HOA even if you're renting?
Well, you could cause it to be formed. You wouldn't be a member of it.
Oh.
The title holder would be a member of it
Okay.
to make it effective. You can make you can make an HOA of people that are renters, but that's not going to give you lien rights. You want the members to be homeowners that have their name on the title. That's your real HOA. Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, look at it this way. People who are right-handed are members of an association of people who are right-handed, right?
Mhm.
Okay. You see the idea? People that drive red cars are members of an association of people who drive red cars. All right. So what you want are people that are members of your association that have lien rights on the property, that own the property, that have the exclusive right to sell the property. That's where all the power is. We don't care about the tenant, although the tenant can step in the place of the owner in most cases. He just has to get the permission of the owner. He can do it by proxy. Yeah, exactly. We're not talking about left-handed people. Not talking about them, but both my parents were left-handed people. That was interesting. Yeah. So, all right, guys, I'm gonna end it for now. It's time for the.
That's interesting.
Yeah, are y'all planning for the 4th of July?
Yeah,
I'm sure we get a
I
blow
don't know
shit
what,
up,
but-
right? Is that how it goes?
yes, what are you doing?
Blow shit up. Cook.
Blow shit up.
burgers,
You're gonna blow shit up.
Yeah,
So
shoot
I
guns.
think, yeah, exactly. Ray's
Yeah.
probably got the best party going on over there.
Yeah.
So Thursday is July 3rd. I'm gonna say you're not gonna see me here.
Take it off. Take it off.
I might, yeah, you're not gonna see me here because I'm
Okay.
gonna be staging my fireworks. All right. So anyways, we'll
All
talk
right.
about it next week. So
Okay, cool.
You get you some of that
Are you-
tannerite and shoot it, John. That tannerite, you know what I'm
I
talking
gotta talk to you more, man. I gotta learn from you. All
And
right,
tomorrow's
thanks,
the
y'all.
first day of summer, so happy summer.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Mhm.
I'm sorry about the
Longest day
7310.
of the
I don't know what
year.
that is. Treasury. I have to talk about this next time. Just gonna. Yeah, I don't know about the public law 7310, but we can bring it up next time, please. All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Have a
Enjoy
good
your
night.
week.
All right, great
See you
call.
next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.